This is East Asia Tonight.
Good Friday evening, I'm Telly Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. China's president talking security ties with Cambodia's Senate leader and economic cooperation with Bangladesh's prime minister on a day of diplomatic bridge building in Beijing. The UN's nuclear watchdog urges Iran to comply with robust inspections written into an MOU signed with the US, even as Tehran says some key sites are off limits. And on the Korean peninsula, Kim Jong-un is calling for a stronger offensive military posture as South Korea ramps up its drone arsenal and trains 500,000 operators. And Hong Kong's IPO market's sizzling with 6 new entrants on the boss day, despite the roller coaster tech-led ride. Also tonight, Japan's football mania at a fever pitch after becoming the first Asian nation to book a spot in the last 32 of the FIFA World Cup. But the team faces a major challenge next. A flurry of diplomacy in China as President Xi Jinping sits down with key political figures from Bangladesh and Cambodia. Now, the meetings are part of Beijing's efforts to further strengthen ties with both countries. Mr. Xi held in-depth discussions with Bangladeshi Prime Minister Tarique Rahman, who urged Beijing to reduce the trade gap. He also said that Dhaka needs Beijing's support to implement major signature projects, as well as to upgrade and modernize current industrial units. Mr. Xi vowed to advance bilateral ties, pledging support to Bangladesh's new government and vowing cooperation on Belt and Road initiatives. Now, Mr. Xi also held talks with Cambodian Senate President Hun Sen today. The Chinese president expressed willingness to form a security partnership with Cambodia that includes tackling problems such as telecom and online fraud. He called on both sides to raise the foundation of strategic mutual trust to, quote, a new height.
中方愿同检方一道，共守和平，共谋发展，共创繁荣，扎实推进中检命运共同体建设，为推进构建人类命运共同体树立典范。
For the latest, we've got CNA's Crystal Chia joining us live from Shanghai. Now, Crystal, the Bangladesh meeting largely focused on trade and investment, but what is the current trade relationship between the two economies?
Yeah, so there's a growing trade deficit now at about 7.8 billion US dollars. And the reason for that is really that Bangladesh has to import from China for a range of sectors, such as its garment manufacturing sector, while its exports to China are lower value and less diversified. So during the meeting, Mr. Rahman requested China to consider some of its other exports, such as its fresh mangoes, jackfruit, and pharmaceutical products. Now, on China's side, it said that it's willing to work with the country and even labeled AI as a sector that it could work together on. But analysts say that China would be probably more cautious about the financing today, given that it prioritizes projects that have clear returns. And not to forget that Bangladesh, because of its location surrounded by India, is not a natural corridor for China. Now, this visit also carries much political significance. Mr. Rahman has to balance ties between Beijing and New Delhi, the latest issue being a Chinese-backed water infrastructure project. This was addressed at China's Foreign Affairs briefing today.
提斯塔河综合治理和修复是孟方十分重视的民生项目，中方愿为此提供 力所能及的帮助和支持。我们想强调的是，中孟合作不针对第三方，也不受第三方因素影响。
Well, it's been a packed day for President Xi, who also hosted Cambodia's Hun Sen, who's in Beijing on a so-called goodwill visit. What can we tell from this whole flurry of diplomacy?
So Beijing is showing an effort to engage its neighbors or the wider region amid geopolitical uncertainty. Now, you mentioned Mr. Hun Sen, for example. He's no longer prime minister, but still holds power as Senate president. And the fact that Beijing is hosting him on a goodwill visit shows its intention to maintain its relationship with one of its strongest ally in Asia. Now, not to forget, this week we are seeing more diplomacy in the Asia region. But for the first half of this year, we saw leaders from the US, Russia, other European countries visiting Beijing, all this contributing to Beijing's desired image as a global stabilizer. Oteli?
Well, many thanks for that report on China's diplomacy. CNA's Crystal Chia speaking to us live from Shanghai. Now, the UN nuclear watchdog says that a very strong verification system is needed in Iran to ensure that the country does not develop nuclear weapons. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, says that the deal between the US and Iran gives its inspectors access to nuclear sites. Now, this contradicts Tehran's claim that key sites would remain off-limits until a final deal with Washington is reached.
What is undeniable is that we have an MOU. This MOU specifically indicates that the nuclear part of the memorandum will be supervised, this is the word, will be supervised by the IAEA. In order to supervise, we need to inspect. There is no other way.
Mr. Grossi is in Japan to visit the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was damaged in an earthquake back in 2011. The IAEA is still monitoring the discharge of treated radioactive water into the ocean, which has raised concerns among Japan's neighbors. So to allay fears of contamination, Mr. Grossi emphasized that experts from China, South Korea and Switzerland are also collecting and independently analyzing seawater samples to ensure the process is safe.
Japan, I think, graciously accepted my suggestion to have monitoring campaigns where we would invite experts from different countries, interested countries, that could take, apart from our own samples and the Japanese samples, their own ones and take them to their laboratories, so they could independently corroborate the results of these tests.
Now, when Mr. Grossi was asked if Russia is helping North Korea with nuclear technology, he says there is no indication of that, but cautioned that IAEA has limited information after its staff were expelled from North Korea in 2009. Meantime, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un calls for the strengthening of what he describes as the military's deadly and destructive offensive posture. Now, he made those remarks after overseeing tests of upgraded artillery and missile systems. According to state media KCNA, the tests include a multiple rocket launcher, which features an autonomous precision guidance systems with a firing range extended to 90 kilometers. Now, that's enough to reach South Korea's capital from positions near the inter-Korean border. Mr. Kim also called for the need of national defense development to ensure, quote, no enemy dare to confront Pyongyang. The North Korean leader earlier this month vowed to beef up the country's defense capabilities. North Korea remains under multiple international sanctions over its nuclear weapons program, which it says is needed to deter the United States and South Korea. Meanwhile, Seoul is stepping up investment in military drones to counter perceived threats from Pyongyang as it prepares for the future of warfare. The Defense Ministry has announced plans to train 500,000 drone warriors and buy more than 20,000 low-cost expendable ones. It also aims to produce 110,000 by 2029 and deploy them across military units. The move comes as Seoul looks to strengthen its defenses against North Korea, which it says is also advancing its drone capabilities. Now, Defense Minister An Gu-bak says that South Korea will also expand counter-drone systems, including laser and high-power microwave weapons, and introduce AI-based drone swarms and loitering munitions. The announcement comes as the military looks to adapt to changing battlefield conditions.
최근 우크라이나 전쟁과 중동 전쟁에서는 드론이 전장의 게임 체인저로 부상했음을 여실히 보여주고 있습니다. 과거에는 소수의 고가 무인 체계가 전장을 주도했다면 이제는 저비용 드론이 대량으로 운용되며 전쟁 양상을 근본적으로 변화시키고 있습니다.
South Korea and Japan will hold talks in Seoul this weekend to deepen military cooperation amid improving ties. Japanese Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi will meet his South Korean counterpart, An Gu-bak. The visit comes less than a month after the ministers last met in Singapore. Earlier this month, the two sides held maritime search and rescue drills for the first time in 9 years. Both Japan and South Korea are wary of China's growing military might. But Seoul remains cautious over proposals for a military logistics pact with Tokyo over their wartime grievances. South Korea's president has said that Japan must offer a genuine apology before things can move forward. It looks like South Korea's former First Lady, Kim Kyung-hee, has been sentenced to 7 years in prison. And she was found guilty of accepting luxury gifts in return for helping secure job appointments and business deals. Prosecutors said that she repeatedly exploited her status as First Lady for personal gain, accepting jewelry and gold and other gifts. A 7-year sentence comes on top of a 4-year prison term that she is already serving for stock manipulation and bribery. Her husband, ousted former President Yoon Suk-yeol, is serving a life sentence over his failed 2024 martial law bid. Earlier this month, he was also sentenced to 30 years in a separate case involving military drone operations against North Korea. Both of Yoon's convictions are under appeal. A time now for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, South Korea's main equity index, the Kospi, led losses in Asia-Pacific markets, triggering a trading halt after it plunged following a tech-led sell-off on Wall Street. Hello again. So good to have your company this Friday evening. It is time now for your business news with Olivia Marzuki. And Liv, today we're talking about this tech rout across Asian markets. Tell us, what do you think is a trigger for that?
Well, I'll tell you, one factor that analysts have pointed their finger at is actually Apple's sudden price hike for the iPad and MacBook. That's with surging memory prices from the AI-driven data boom. So investors beginning to wonder who's bearing the cost of rising semiconductor prices, and that is providing a reality check for Asian markets. An automatic trading halt was triggered on the Kospi after it plunged 8% before trading resumed, and it ended the day nearly 6% to the downside. The Nikkei 225 finished 4% underwater in Tokyo. Steep declines for tech in South Korea. Chip heavyweights SK hynix ending the day more than 8% down. Samsung Electronics sank more than 5%. We're seeing double-digit losses for memory chip maker Kioxia in Tokyo and Japanese tech investor SoftBank as well, more than 12% down for SoftBank. Greater China tracking regional peers with sharp falls seen across the board, especially in tech stocks led by Shenzhen Comp. The Hun Sen in Hong Kong and Shanghai Composite also fell about 2% each. One analyst tells us to pay a closer look at the underlying demand when assessing market moves.
As you can see from some of the stock markets, there's been some pullback in terms of the sentiment, concerns about cost or concern about whether the rally has gone too far ahead. But I think the underlying demand could still be propelling the developments going forward. I'm thinking about, let's say, robotics. That could be the theme for the next few years, and that will continue to fuel the demand for manufacturing in Asia, and that could be supportive of some of the counters and the borrowers that we are seeing in the region as well, because Asia is very much at the center of manufacturing, and AI will propel this demand for electronic products.
Despite the negative finish today, Hong Kong's red-hot IPO market is showing no signs of slowing. The number of new listings and funds raised so far this year already more than double last year's numbers. 6 companies made their debut on the Hong Kong exchange today, raising a combined $2.5 billion. Recent public offerings point to renewed interest in Hong Kong listings, and also demand for companies in the AI, chips, and advanced manufacturing sectors. Leading the charge was Apple supplier Lingyi iTech, which raised $1.1 billion to fund its push into AI servers and robotics. Shares of the Guangdong-based electronic component maker jumped in the first hour before closing the day more than 4% lower in their Hong Kong debut, underperforming the wider Hun Sen. And here's what the founder of Lingyi iTech had to say on why they chose a second listing outside the mainland.
作为巨人背后的长期制造合作伙伴，我们构建了大规模、高标准、高复杂度的生产体系。港股上市为我们开启了对全球资本市场的新航道。
For more, we have CNA's Geraldine Yap joining us live from Hong Kong. Jerry, we saw a brutal tech sell-off today, drag down Lingyi's debut, and it was actually heavily oversubscribed at first, and it opened pretty strong, but ended the session below its IPO pricing. Tell us more about the company's fundamentals here.
Well, you may not have heard of this Chinese company, but the chances are that you have used products containing parts made by them. The company supplies electrical components for smartphones, tablets, and laptop computers, and its customers include big companies like Apple, Samsung, and Huawei. Now, the company's revenue grew over 16% year on year last year, and they're now looking to raise funds to expand beyond the smartphone market and into AI and humanoid robots over the next 3 years to ride on the global demand for AI infrastructure. Now, the company has said that part of the proceeds will go to expanding manufacturing capacity for things like AI computing servers and humanoid robot hardware. And in fact, the company aims to build 10,000 of these robots this year and 500,000 robots per year by 2030. Now, they have set a goal of becoming one of the world's top 3 suppliers of hardware integrated with AI. Lingyi is also listed in Shenzhen, and one analyst tells us that dual listings like this show that there is an appetite among China-listed firms to list in Hong Kong, not just for more capital. Here's what he had to say.
They utilize Hong Kong as a platform to exchange, as a platform to access to international investors, as well as promote their brands and products and gain better recognition overall on the international stage. Yeah, and the boom for sizable IPOs is also helped by the AI, semiconductors, robotics, and biotech companies. Their growth stories and their rapid development in the PLC across different value chains.
All right, Jerry, so Lingyi is just one of 6. We are interested to know more about the other listings today. Do you see any continued trend of Chinese companies headed for Hong Kong, given its attractiveness for international investors? Are there Chinese firms trying to do dual listings on the mainland as well? And why is that?
Right. So I think, in terms of Chinese companies looking to list in Hong Kong, it's both companies looking for dual listings as well as companies listing for the first time in Hong Kong. And in fact, of the 6 companies that listed today, they include the Chinese AI company Zhongke Wenke, whose shares surged over 80% after the market opened. But one of the companies that listed today was also a non-mainland Chinese company, the Indonesian mining firm Merdeka Gold. And I mean, this is one thing to note, because the Hong Kong Exchange has been trying to attract more non-mainland Chinese firms to list in the city. And analysts tell me that Merdeka Gold's successful listing will be a positive sign for Hong Kong to position itself as a regional financing hub. Now, the Hong Kong IPO market has been going strong this year. And according to Hong Kong Exchange data, there were 62 newly listed companies in the first 5 months of the year alone. And that's compared with 29 in the same period last last year. And together, these companies have raised over $21 billion US. We do expect to see this momentum carry over to the second half of the year. And in fact, we are expecting a few big names to list later this year as well. They include the Chinese social media giant Xiaohongshu, and some reports have said that this could rank among the largest listings in Hong Kong in recent years. Another company that we're looking out for is the Chinese autonomous driving startup Momenta. Now, one analyst tells me that successful listings will be a confidence booster for the market, but it's also important to look at the performance of the shares after listing. And here's what she had to say.
If the valuation turn out to be proved to be too aggressive, if investors lost money, right, then the window could close very soon. In addition, there are other risks, right? Whether the Fed is going to hike the interest rate, whether there will be continued concern about the Chinese economic growth, and also market volatility, right? Again, a lot of firms, conduct IPO to raise capital. They want to sell shares for a good price. So secondary market performance is also very important.
Now, Hong Kong will lose its top spot for IPO fundraising this year, and that's because of SpaceX's record listing on NASDAQ. But it is still expected to remain in the top 3 by the end of the year. Earlier this week, Hong Kong Financial Secretary Paul Chan said that the city is also looking to expand investment and IPO access to mainland Chinese investors. Now, currently, only eligible mainland investors in the Greater Bay Area are allowed to invest in approved wealth management products across the border. And analysts say that if this plan goes ahead, it will further enhance liquidity and mean more capital flowing into the Hong Kong market.
All right, Jerry, thank you so much for your reporting. Geraldine Yap in Hong Kong.
So this whole IPO boom, very exciting stuff. And to tell us more, I'm going to turn to you, Liv, because Jerry was just telling us about this Ling Yi tech and then the wave of all these new listings in Hong Kong. But how strong do you think Hong Kong's IPO market is right now?
Well, I'll tell you, generally speaking, it is looking pretty strong. So according to one estimate by Deloitte, one of the big four global services networks, Hong Kong ranked number 2 globally for IPO fundraising so far this year in the first half. So as at 17 June, which was last week, Wednesday, it had 78 new listings, raising about 203 billion Hong Kong dollars. That's roughly around 26 billion US in proceeds. So that's double the amount raised in the same period last year. And that puts Hong Kong Exchange ahead of New York Exchange, Euronext, and Shanghai. So Hong Kong ranked second only to tech-heavy NASDAQ, which has seen blockbuster tech IPOs so far this year, including SpaceX.
So are these firstly mostly mainland Chinese companies raising money in Hong Kong that we're talking about? And I guess a key question is, is this momentum going to hold?
Well, yes. Interestingly, there's a boost of confidence in Hong Kong IPO scene so far. And interestingly, NASDAQ's lead came with a major caveat. So Deloitte added that NASDAQ was boosted by one massive IPO, which is SpaceX. That listing alone raised around 86.6 billion US dollars. So excluding SpaceX, NASDAQ's IPO would have only been very little, about 25.2 billion. And that is why Hong Kong, at 26.1 billion, would have narrowly overtaken NASDAQ by just a little under $1 billion. So in short, I'll tell you, this is not just a regional rebound. We're talking about Hong Kong once again taking center stage when it comes to the world's main IPO venues. All eyes are now on whether it can sustain that momentum as more high-profile companies go public.
Okay, so it sounds like Hong Kong is back in the global IPO race, but investors obviously will still be watching the quality of the listing.
That's right, and we're talking about mainland Chinese firms mostly participating in it. It's a big part of the Hong Kong IPO. Many of the major listings are Chinese names already listed in Shanghai or Shenzhen and are seeking a Hong Kong dual listing as well. So Hong Kong gives them access to international investors while keeping them close to the mainland, right? Similarly, it also gives global investors exposure to Chinese names, especially in lucrative areas like AI, like EV, supply chain, advanced manufacturing, biotech. So for now, the pipeline looks pretty strong. We're looking at around 160 new listings, according to Deloitte forecast for Hong Kong IPO this year, bringing at least 38.6 billion US dollars. The real test is indeed, like what you said, is the quality. A hot IPO, it means good for fundraising, but the question is whether investors can absorb all these deals and whether the newly listed shares will perform well after the debut. In the case of Lingyi, it's pretty short-lived. The fanfare didn't last that long.
All right, so still wait and see approach we'll all have to take. Well, thanks for now, Olivia, but you are going to be back with more business news, so I'll be chatting with you more in a little bit. For now, we are going to go for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, about 1 million people ordered to evacuate in Japan with torrential rain pounding parts of the country as 2 tropical storms approach. Plus, an attack in the Strait of Hormuz forces the UN to pause its escort operation in the key oil waterway.
NA.
This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. A flurry of diplomacy in China. President Xi Jinping talking economic cooperation with Bangladesh's Prime Minister. And also discussing a potential security partnership with Cambodia's Senate leader Hun Sen that includes tackling problems such as telecom and online fraud. The North Korean leader Kim Jong-un calls for the strengthening of what he describes as the military's deadly and destructive offensive posture. This, as South Korea ramps up its drone arsenal and trains 500,000 operators to counter threats from the north. And the UN's nuclear watchdog urges Iran to comply with robust inspections written into an MOU signed with the US, even as Tehran says some key sites are off limits. Torrential rain is pummeling Japan as tropical storms Makala and Igos approach. More than 2 million people have been ordered to evacuate as authorities issue warnings for flooding and landslides. At least 4 people have been injured. The downpours have caused Kyoto's iconic Kamo River to overflow its banks. Officials in Kyoto and Osaka warn that vigilance is required because of the threat of flooding. Automaker Toyota briefly halted operations at a factory in the southern island of Kyushu. The severe weather has also disrupted travel. More than 200 flights were cancelled, dozens of train services suspended, and several expressways closed. Well, the twin storms are expected to make landfall over the weekend. Makala packing gusts of up to 144 kilometers per hour, but has been downgraded from a typhoon. Meanwhile, Igos is expected to move across eastern Japan tomorrow. Now, before approaching Japan, Makala skirted Taiwan, bringing heavy rain and severe flooding. Around 6 million people were affected. Schools and offices were closed across several regions, with more than 1,600 people evacuating their homes. Well, those storms coming as Japan recovers from a 7.2 magnitude earthquake just yesterday off the coast of northern Iwate Prefecture. More than 10 people were injured, but no major damage was reported. A government panel has urged residents in the country's north to stay prepared as seismic activity intensifies. It said that it's too early to link the latest tremor to a major quake, but the panel cautioned that continued seismic activity could gradually raise the risk. The quake reached upper 6 on Japan's 7-point seismic intensity scale in parts of Omori Prefecture. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said that emergency response teams were monitoring the situation and assessing any potential impact, while calling on residents to remain alert for aftershocks. Well, international help is ramping up for Venezuela, which is still grappling with the devastation from powerful twin earthquakes. Search and rescue is into the second day as the death toll hits 235. Now, China has confirmed that 2 of its nationals are among the dead, and at least 4,300 people are injured. The acting president visited one of the worst-hit areas. Delcy Rodriguez had a first-hand look at the state of La Guaira. Damage evident across the place. Ms. Rodriguez assured the people of her government's support and that foreign help is coming.
Estamos acompañando a la familia. Extendemos nuestra solidaridad y esperamos recuperar la mayor cantidad de personas con vida.
First foreign rescuers to arrive are expected from the Dominican Republic, and this will be followed by others, including the U.S., which is sending 2 warships, transport aircraft, and $150 million worth of aid. A senior American military has arrived in Caracas to oversee U.S. relief efforts. China and India have also offered help. Rescuers will be confronted with devastation along the northern coast. Venezuela is among the poorest in Latin America due to economic mismanagement. The United Nations says that the country was already needing help before the double disaster struck. The twin quakes happened less than a minute apart, magnitude 7.2 and then 7.5, the strongest to hit Venezuela in more than a century. And because they were shallow, their impact was felt strongly in La Guaira and Caracas. Buildings collapsed, triggering panic, as you can imagine. Many people were at home as it was a public holiday. Venezuela's main international airport was damaged and shut, potentially complicating aid efforts. Shouting for their loved ones, hoping for a response. Thousands of people were reported missing. Many residents resorted to searching on their own as emergency services are stretched. In the immediate aftermath, multiple survivors were pulled from the rubble. Survival rates are said to be the highest during the so-called golden window, which is the 72-hour period following a disaster. 2 powerful earthquakes, 39 seconds apart. The deadly sequence that struck Venezuela is known as an earthquake doublet. CNA's Julie Yu explains why they're especially dangerous.
A doublet happens when 2 earthquakes of similar strength strike close together in both time and location. Now, that's different from the more common pattern where one major quake is followed by much smaller aftershocks. Doublet tremblers are especially dangerous because the first quake can weaken structures. Before rescue efforts can even begin, the second quake strikes, causing even more damage that can make rescue operations even more complicated. Scientists from the U.S. Geological Survey say doublets are uncommon, but they can happen anywhere in the world. So why wasn't there a major tsunami? Although the earthquakes were powerful, they mainly involved sideways movement along the plate boundary. That type of motion usually doesn't displace the sea floor enough to generate a large tsunami. Because scientists have predicted this double earthquake with today's technology? Well, experts say no.
We're not at a state in the science where we've got robust tools that will let us predict earthquakes. We can forecast the areas in which they're going to occur. So we can say a part of the world like northern Venezuela is prone to earthquakes. We can use the historical records. We can look at features in the rocks in the landscape of the area to make those claims. But that's a long way from being able to do the useful thing of predicting with accuracy when an earthquake is going to occur, where it's going to occur, and what size it's going to be.
Well, the UN has paused its operation to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz after a vessel came under attack near Oman, raising fresh doubts over whether an interim deal to end the Middle East conflict can hold. The International Maritime Organization says that the pause is necessary to reassess safety guarantees for ships in the region. The escort program was launched earlier this week to help vessels and seafarers leave the Gulf. Well, the latest incident involved the Singapore-flagged cargo ship Ever Lovely. Taiwan's Evergreen Marine says that the vessel was struck by an unknown object, damaging bridge windows, while following the UK Maritime Agency's recommended route. The crew, cargo, and vessel are reportedly unharmed. The company says all of its vessels have exited the Gulf. Now, prior to the attack, Tehran warned that ships traveling outside routes approved by Iran will not be guaranteed safe passage. The country now says that shipping activity in Hormuz will be governed by the terms of what it calls a war-end memorandum with Oman. Now, despite the security concerns, South Korea is beginning to move more of its commercial fleet out of the Gulf. President Lee Jae-myung says that 3 more South Korean ships are expected to leave the waterway over the weekend, after 8 others have already exited. Oil prices subsiding amid easing supply concerns as more tankers exit the Strait of Hormuz. Refining giant Saudi Aramco resuming loads at its Ras Tanura terminal after a near 4-month halt. An analyst said that China's demand is also not yet picking up. Crude oil benchmarks both down more than 3.5%. Brent now trading at about $72 per barrel, with WTI now below the $70 per barrel mark. The benchmarks are headed for losses of around 8% for this week. Time now for another short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, Samsung readying a big bet to help develop South Korea's AI boom into a nationwide growth engine. And Japan becomes the first Asian nation to make it to the knockout stage of the FIFA World Cup. Next up for the Samurai Blue, 5-time champions Brazil. Hello again. Good to have you back on East Asia Tonight. As promised, we have another business update with Olivia Marzuki. And Liv, we're going to be talking about the AI boom. Apparently, that is helping to reposition South Korea's economy on the global stage. And the government, what they're doing is planning to capitalize on that. How is that going to work out?
Well, I'll tell you. So Seoul is hoping to convert the surging AI chip demand into a broader economic boost. And it is enlisting the top electronic firms in this. Samsung Group is reportedly preparing a decade-long investment plan worth about $648 billion aimed at expanding South Korea's AI and semiconductor industries. A formal announcement is expected on the 29th of June during a meeting between the South Korean president and heavyweight companies like Samsung and SK hynix. The plan could include a $194 billion investment in new chip manufacturing facilities in the country's southwest, alongside spending on AI data centers, batteries, and display technologies. The investment comes as South Korea looks to accelerate chip production and spread high-tech development beyond the capital region to meet surging AI demand. And the AI shakeup is accelerating, transforming workplaces across the globe. Well, does this spell doom and gloom, or could this actually sweeping change unlock more jobs? CNA's Rani Samtani finds out more.
This is like a tsunami hitting the labor market.
AI is for sure going to change a lot of jobs, totally take some jobs away.
You're not going to lose your jobs to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who learned AI better than you.
There are a category of jobs where there will be a shift.
It's being called the AI disruption phase. Industry layoffs are rising, and executives have been quick to say it's because they're doing more with artificial intelligence. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, has warned that 50% of entry-level jobs could be affected over the next 5 years, while Microsoft predicts everyday desk jobs could be automated within the next year. The World Economic Forum projects 92 million jobs could be displaced worldwide by 2030. That's just 4 years from now. But here in Asia, there seems to be a more optimistic outlook.
I think there's certainly anxiety whenever there's technological changes in terms of what happened to my job with the new technology coming forth. Those are real. What we do also to see is, as technology comes in, new jobs will be created, new companies will be set up. And if we look back on the internet days, in terms of the introduction of the internet, we're actually seeing a lot more interesting jobs coming forth, right? Jobs that created higher productivity for people, creating sort of new pathways to skills learning for individuals.
AI is definitely changing the world of work in very distinct ways. The first change we see in the data is that new jobs are being created. Jobs like AI engineer, prompt engineer, and data annotation, those did not exist before AI came along.
Research from Boston Consulting Group shows AI will reshape more jobs than it replaces. But what does this mean for new college graduates entering the AI economy?
6 months ago, I graduated from uni, and right now, I'm still unemployed.
This is the first week that I have 0 job interviews.
Cycle is you apply, wait, get rejected, or hear nothing back.
Being a new grad with no job is honestly the most embarrassing thing I've
ever felt in my life for a really long time.
I would say that what we've seen over the last year is graduate jobs. So these are students coming out of university. The opportunities for them in traditional pathways going into corporate employment out of university are decreasing. Stanford's reported a 16% decrease directly because of generative AI.
Youth unemployment in China has risen to 16.9%. In India, nearly 40% of graduates are jobless. Here in Singapore, it stands at about 6%.
Always tell them to risk manage, right?
Global education charity Young Founders School has been working to ensure even high school students are preparing for the new world of work, equipping them with AI fluency and entrepreneurial skills.
I would expect anybody who wants to work in an organization that I'm part of to be able to come and at least design AI solutions and automation solutions for young people in Asia. With AI, you can set up your own company in a matter of days, and you can go head-to-head with the biggest business in the world.
Wong Kei-Lum started his entrepreneurial journey with Young Founders School at age 16. 3 years later, he's running 2 successful startups while pursuing his diploma.
YFS actually gave us a lot of connections, especially in the finance industry. So I started learning technical analysis in the market when I was 17 years old, still studying in ITE. But then I realized that I was actually really good at it, and I enjoyed doing it because I get to choose the timings I get to work. The dream would be to have companies start passive incomes for me, so I wouldn't have to worry about not having a job, worry about financial difficulties.
So, is the AI economy breaking the career ladder? Analysts say automation will not equal job loss. Most jobs will remain, but will change substantially. Managers will redesign roles and reskill workers, shifting them towards higher value tasks. Workers who then learn to use AI as an effective collaborator could gain a significant advantage as workplaces become increasingly AI focused. Rani Samtani, CNA, Singapore.
Despite rapid transformations in the workspace, one trend is becoming increasingly clear. AI talent is emerging as a key battleground in the US-China rivalry. Read this article on our website, cna.asia, and on our mobile app.
Well, it hit fever pitch in Tokyo as Japan's national football team advanced to the knockout stage in the World Cup. They drew with Sweden in their final group match, but the result was good enough for them to advance, a second-placed team in their group after the Netherlands. CNA senior correspondent Michio Ishida has more on the mood in Tokyo.
Here in Shibuya, football fever is known to be most intense compared with anywhere else in Japan. When the national team plays, thousands of police are mobilized at the famous Shibuya crossing, practically hijacked by football fans rejoicing. And you can easily spot football-related decorations. Meet Samurai Blues head coach Hajime Moriyasu in his signature posture, taking note. Shops are running out of stock of these football-related items fast. And some economists think if Samurai Blue advances to the quarterfinals, the Japanese economy could see a 0.05% boost to its GDP. At a nearby sports bar, fans were ecstatic when Daisen Maeda of Celtic goaled. But there was dismay when Sweden equalized for an eventual draw. So how do you feel about today's result?
That was not the best, but we did like good game.
勝ってほしかったですね。まあでも決勝トーナメント上がれたので。
There were many who normally do not watch football among the crowd.
めちゃくちゃにわかファンです。なんでルールもあんま分からない中カードばっかり今日出しました。
Next, the Samurai Blue will face a 5-time FIFA World Cup champion.
次ブラジルなんで、ブラジルの方が多分戦いやすいと思いますね。はい。勝ってますしね。そう、ブラジル勝ってるんで。
A win will be needed to advance further, and it's not an impossible dream. The Samurai Blue beat the Canarinha last October in a friendly match 3-2.
Let's go, Nepal!
Michio Ishida, CNA, Tokyo.
Still ahead on Asia tonight, here are just some of the stories that we're also going to be covering. Malaysia's Johor State election campaign officially gets underway tomorrow, with candidates set to be nominated for all 56 seats. Multi-cornered contests are expected as the vote shapes up to be a key test of support for the major coalitions ahead of the next general election. Western Europe is battling an intense early summer heat wave with record June temperatures in parts of Britain and Switzerland. Hundreds of people have died, while hospitals, power grids and public services are coming under increasing strain as the extreme heat spreads east. And a new UN report warns that the global illicit drug trade is expanding at record levels. Cocaine production, methamphetamine seizures have hit new highs, while the growing availability of powerful synthetic drugs is fueling concerns over rising drug use worldwide. We've got these stories and more on Asia tonight, 8 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time, right here on CNA. And that wraps up this Friday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. And for our Singapore audience, do stay on for highlights from the FIFA World Cup. Have a great weekend.
Japan have made the last 32 after holding Sweden to a draw in Dallas as the Samurai Blue sliced through the Swedish defense to go ahead in the 56th minute. But the Swedes stunned Japan with a 62nd minute equalizer. The 1-1 draw sending both teams into the next round. Sweden in as one of the top third-place finishers while Japan play Brazil next. In the other match, the Dutch topped Group F after beating Tunisia, going ahead through a Tunisian own goal just 3 minutes in before making it 2-0 in the 7th. Tunisia pulled one back in the 54th minute, only for the Netherlands to restore the 2-goal lead in the 62nd. Final score 3-1 as the Dutch play Morocco next. And over in Group D, co-host the USA took a 3rd-minute lead against Turkey in Los Angeles. That sparked a fight back as the Turks equalizing in the 10th minute and even went ahead in the 31st. The U.S. leveled after the break in the 49th, only for Turkey, bottom of the group, to end their tournament on a high with the late winner for the 3-2 win. Turkey still out of the competition, while the U.S. play Bosnia and Herzegovina next. In the other match, Australia finished second in the group after a 0-0 draw with Paraguay to book their spot in the last 32. Paraguay also on course to qualify as one of the 8 best third-place teams with 4 points. Group B, Ecuador stunned Germany to reach the last 32, but it was the Germans who took the lead after 2 minutes, only for Ecuador to equalize 7 minutes later. The Ecuadorians then took the lead in the 77th minute, holding on to win 2-1 and finished 3rd in the group and among the tournament's top third-place finishers. And history made in the other group match as the Ivory Coast beating Curaçao 2-0 in Philadelphia to reach the knockout rounds for the first time in history. Nicolas Pepe scoring in each half as the Elephants march into history and onto the last 32.